Google recently announced an update coming in July of 2018 called the Google Speed Update. This is going to affect some of your SEO strategies. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you about what it is and what you can do to get ready. Hey guys, Chris Love, the owner of Love to Dev, and today I'm going to talk to you about the latest Google search engine ranking update, or at least the latest one announced, and that is the Google Speed Update. Now, the Google Webmaster team posted on its blog recently that in July of 2018, it's going to start emphasizing page load performance more than it has in the past. In particular, this Google Speed Update, as they're calling it, is going to affect the mobile index. And if you've been paying attention to SEO in the last year or so, Google has also announced ahead of time that sometime in 2018, they're going to flip the priorities of their two indexes. Now first, you may be wondering, what are these indexes? Well, Google effectively has two search indexes, one for desktop and one for mobile. But since 2015, the vast majority of searches online, that means basically Google, a little bit in Bing, have come from mobile devices. Now, we don't know the exact split on that, but I'm pretty sure it's 60% or more, probably more like 70, and getting bigger each day. And that's because things like voice search and the fact that people pretty much interact on the internet way more on their phones than they do their desktops these days. So Google is making their primary index the mobile index. But up to this point, even though speed has been a factor on desktop, it hasn't been a major factor as far as the mobile index is concerned. But according to this update, that's changing. Now, what they did say is that this should only affect the absolute slowest pages on the internet. Now, that may be you. They did say as well, if you've got the best absolute content that people will actually wait for it to load, then you may not be affected by this ranking. But I'm here to tell you, making a page go fast is not that hard to do, but unfortunately, most of us get in our own way and make this an almost impossible task. So what should you do to get ready for this update? At this point, when I'm recording this video, we still got about 5 months to get ready. So there's plenty of time to get things done, but you should act sooner rather than later. And that is, make sure your pages load faster. Now there are several areas you can target to improve your pages' load performance. And if you've paid attention to what Google said over the past year, you may have heard the value 19 seconds. They're saying that their analysis is showing that it's taking an average web page 19 seconds to load on a mobile device. Honestly, that shouldn't be hard to beat. And to be blunt, you got a lot of things going against you when it comes to being on mobile. Cellular connections are very flaky and intermittent, which means they're not reliable. And here in the US, they may be fast, but again, unreliable. I live in a very populated urban area or suburban area, but there are several places that I go to frequently where I've got spotty cell phone coverage, including a couple of Italian restaurants near me, which means I got no connectivity while I'm out eating, which probably is a good thing, to be honest with you. So what can you do to make sure that your page loads fast? Well, the first thing is make sure it's built mobile first. And that means making sure that your design is built to be usable on phones. Now, if your web developer or designer is not starting from a mobile-first approach and then using media queries in their CSS to define responsive design as it gets bigger, then they're not doing it correctly for you. If you're going desktop down to mobile, you've probably got issues. Start mobile. It helps you keep your content cleaner and leaner, which means it loads faster. Next, you need to isolate out two different parts of the page load time. The first is what I call the time to first byte. This is that short amount of time, or at least it should be a very short amount of time, that it takes a request to your server to get that first document or the actual HTML page for the rest of the page to load. Try to target 250 milliseconds for your average page time to first byte. Anything beyond that, you've got a little bit of work to do. Now, I've seen many pages that part sometimes takes 1 to 5 seconds. If you see that kind of statistics, you've got major server-side issues. And I'll produce some other content about that. But if you've got questions about it, please leave those in the comments below, and I'd definitely like to interact with you. But once that document loads, that's where the real work starts. That 250 milliseconds should be 25% or less of your actual page load experience. And that's because you really want to try to get to 1 second. And there's some psychology behind that 1 second number. And at 3 seconds, over half the people that tried to visit your page have already given up and moved on, probably to look at videos of cats, most likely. Well, what about that actual page load part? Well, my number one tip is eliminate the amount of JavaScript you're using. Today, far too many sites are loading way too much JavaScript, and most of that JavaScript is never used. And JavaScript is the code or the engine that we use in websites to actually drive what we call front-end user experience, or some of those cool effects that we see. But the reality is, most websites don't really implement that many cool effects that actually need JavaScript. In fact, most of those effects should probably be really focused on what we call CSS. JavaScript is what we call a blocking process. And that means that the browser stops everything it's doing when it comes to a JavaScript file, and it stops rendering anything. It has to load the file, evaluate the file, and then execute the script before it can go on. And there's a lot of technical reasons behind that, but in general, you should keep your JavaScript to a bare minimum. If you're loading more than 50 kilobytes of JavaScript, most likely you're loading way too much JavaScript. Most sites these days are loading upwards of 1 to 2 megs of JavaScript. And I've even seen a few sites that are even over 10 megs of JavaScript. It's outlandish, guys. So try to eliminate the amount of JavaScript you're using. Next, minimize the amount of CSS you're using. Just like JavaScript, CSS can also be a blocking process. And most sites use way less than 5% of the CSS they're loading. And there's tools that you can put in as part of your build or rendering process to help you minimize or eliminate the amount of CSS that you're loading. Next, optimize your images. Most images on the internet are just taken from a camera and slapped up on the server and we're done, right? Absolutely not. In most cases, those high-def photos that we're taking on the phone can be optimized at that size and probably eliminate half or more of the actual bytes without reducing the quality of the photo. Next, you should create what we call a responsive image array. That means you should create multiple sizes of that image, targeting different types of viewports. And when I talk about a viewport, I'm talking about a mobile phone, a mini tablet, a desktop, and a large screen desktop. And you may want to have even more sizes than that. Normally, I generate 10 to 12 image sizes depending on the actual starting size of that image. And we use something called responsive images. So in that image tag that renders out your image, you should look at adding a source set attribute with that array reference there. Now I'm going to produce some more content on responsive images in the coming days, so make sure you subscribe to the channel so you won't miss those. Now those are some low-hanging fruit that pretty much any site can apply to improve their performance so that they can be ready for the Google Speed Update. Now I don't want you to suffer from falling search engine ranks. In fact, I want you to improve. So if you get any questions about web performance optimization, page load improvement, definitely leave those in the comments section below, and definitely subscribe to the channel because I'm going to be producing a whole lot more content on this. And also go check out the blog. I've got lots of resources about web performance optimization. It's been one of my passions for over a decade now. So again, in July 2018, Google will have officially switched over to its mobile index as its primary index, and one of the key ranking factors that they're going to emphasize more than they have in the past is page load experience. And you need to upgrade your website so that it loads faster sooner rather than later. Don't wait till July to make your site load faster. Go ahead and get started right now. Not only will you see better search engine placement, but you'll also see happier and more engaged customers because they don't have to wait on your content to load. And that ultimately gives you the competitive advantage that you need to succeed online.